The rain drummed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 42nd floor as Nathaniel Ashford stood motionless, hands clasped behind his back. The city of New York sprawled beneath him like a chessboard where he held all the winning pieces. At 32, he commanded a technology empire worth $8 billion. Yet his penthouse office felt as cold and empty as a mausoleum. Nathaniel's reflection in the glass showed a man who could have stepped from the pages of a luxury magazine. Perfectly tailored charcoal suit, steel gray eyes that missed nothing, and an expression that had been carved from marble. His black hair was slicked back with military precision, not a strand daring to rebel against his control. Everything about him screamed power, success, and absolute dominance. But power came with a price that few understood. The fortress of solitude James Morrison, his personal assistant of 5 years, knocked softly before entering. Even James, who handled Nathaniel's most intimate business affairs, maintained the careful distance that everyone did. He placed a leather portfolio on the mahogany desk and stepped back immediately. "The quarterly report, sir?" "The board meeting is scheduled for 3 o'clock, James said, his voice professionally neutral. Nathaniel turned from the window, his movement fluid, yet mechanical. "Cancel it." "Sir, this is the third meeting you've postponed this month. Rebecca Hamilton from the board called again this morning. She's concerned about—" "I said cancel it." The words cut through the air like a blade. Nathaniel's voice carried no anger, no emotion at all. It was simply final. James nodded quickly and retreated, closing the door with the whispered care of someone handling explosives. This was how every interaction went in Nathaniel's world. People approached him like he was radioactive, spoke to him in measured tones, and fled as soon as possible. The making of a machine Nathaniel hadn't always been this way. Once he had been a passionate college student with dreams of changing the world through technology. He'd started his first company in a garage with his best friend, Michael, pooling their savings to buy secondhand computers and living on instant noodles. But success had a way of stripping away everything that made life beautiful. Michael had died in a car accident just as their company went public. The guilt of celebrating his biggest triumph while his best friend lay in a morgue had frozen something inside Nathaniel's chest. He'd learned that caring meant pain, that emotional investment led to devastating loss, so he'd built walls. First around his heart, then around his life. He'd transformed from a dreamer into a calculating machine that acquired companies like pieces on a board game. His personal relationships became transactions. His emotions became liabilities to be eliminated. The daily ritual of emptiness. Morning routine never varied. Nathaniel woke at 5:30 in his minimalist penthouse apartment. The walls were white, the furniture black, and there wasn't a single personal photograph anywhere. He exercised alone in his private gym, ate breakfast prepared by a chef he rarely saw, and reviewed market reports while his driver navigated through traffic in his bulletproof car. He owned 17 luxury vehicles but felt no joy in driving. He had homes in 6 countries, but felt at peace in none of them. His closet contained suits worth more than most people's annual salaries, yet he felt nothing when putting them on. This particular Tuesday started like any other. The usual stack of invitations to charity galas, business dinners, and social events awaited him. Beautiful women from elite circles sent him messages through various channels, hoping to catch the attention of one of the world's most eligible bachelors. He deleted them all without reading. The invisible barrier at Ashford Technologies. Employees literally stepped aside when Nathaniel walked through the corridors, not because he was cruel or demanding, but because he radiated an energy that made people instinctively retreat. It was like a black hole that absorbed all warmth and light from his surroundings. Rebecca Hamilton, the only board member who dared to challenge him occasionally, had once told him he was becoming less human with each passing year. She'd been right. He'd fired her from 3 committees the following week. The marketing team was presenting their latest campaign when Nathaniel entered the conference room. 23 executives in expensive suits sat around a table that could have fed a small village, but the moment he appeared, the energy shifted. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Laughter died in throats. Even the air seemed to grow thinner. "Continue," he said, taking his seat at the head of the table. The presentation resumed. But now every word was carefully measured. People who had been joking moments before became robotic. Creative ideas were abandoned in favor of safe, predictable proposals. This was the Nathaniel effect, turning vibrant humans into nervous automatons. The underground encounter after the meeting? Nathaniel decided to walk to his next appointment instead of taking the car. It was a rare impulse that he couldn't quite explain. The autumn air was crisp, and for a moment, he almost remembered what it felt like to enjoy a simple sensation. He turned down a side street he'd never explored, drawn by the sound of something. Unexpected, genuine laughter. Following the sound, he discovered a small underground cafe called the Painted Moon. It was hidden beneath a vintage bookstore, accessible only by a narrow staircase marked with a hand-painted sign. The cafe was everything his world wasn't. Mismatched furniture, walls covered in local artwork, plants hanging from every available surface, and soft jazz music creating an atmosphere of warmth and creativity. College students sat next to elderly chess players. Artists sketched in notebooks, while sipping coffee from handmade mugs. And then he saw her. The artist in her element, Luna Chen, stood behind the counter. But she wasn't just serving coffee, she was creating art. Her movements were fluid and graceful as she worked the espresso machine, talking animatedly with customers about their dreams, their projects, their lives. She had long black hair that caught the warm cafe lights, and when she smiled, it was like watching sunrise after a long winter. She wore paint-stained jeans and a vintage band t-shirt that would have cost more to dry. Clean than she probably made in a week. Yet she looked more elegant than any woman in designer gowns he'd ever met. There was an energy around her that was magnetic, not because she was trying to impress anyone, but because she was completely, authentically herself. Nathaniel found himself standing in line, something he hadn't done in years. Usually everything came to him. People brought him coffee, food, documents, solutions. But here, he was just another customer, and the experience was strangely liberating. "What can I create for you today?" Luna asked when it was his turn, and her choice of words struck him as odd. Most people asked what he wanted. She asked what she could create. He looked up at the menu board, which was handwritten in colorful chalk. Coffee, black. Luna studied his face with curious dark eyes that seemed to see straight through his expensive armor. "That's not a creation, that's a surrender. You look like someone who needs something with a little magic in it." Before he could protest, she was already working. Combining espresso with steamed milk, adding a dash of cinnamon, and something that smelled like vanilla and possibility. She handed him a cup with a perfect leaf pattern in the foam. "This is the Luna Special," she said with a smile that could have powered the entire cafe, designed to remind people that they're still alive. The crack in the armor, Nathaniel took a sip, and for the first time in years, he actually tasted his coffee. It was rich and complex, with layers of flavor that revealed themselves slowly. But more than that, it was made with care by someone who genuinely wanted to brighten his day. "Thank you," he said, and the words felt rusty in his mouth. When was the last time he'd thanked someone for something so simple? "Don't thank me yet," Luna laughed. "Wait until you see if it works." As he found a small table in the corner, Nathaniel realized he was doing something unprecedented, lingering. He had 17 meetings scheduled for the rest of the day. But instead of rushing to the next obligation, he sat in this underground sanctuary and watched Luna work. She moved through the cafe like a conductor leading an orchestra. She knew every customer's name, asked about their families, their studies, their art. An elderly man named Frank came in for his daily chess game, and she already had his drink ready. A young woman stressed about finals received not just coffee, but genuine encouragement that visibly lifted her spirits. Luna wasn't just running a business, she was creating a community. In a world where Nathaniel owned companies with thousands of employees who were afraid to make eye contact with him, this young woman had built something real with her bare hands and an open heart. The moment of recognition, as Nathaniel prepared to leave, Luna appeared at his table with a small wrapped package. "A little something extra," she said. "It looked like you needed it." Inside was a small painting on canvas, no bigger than his palm. It showed a man in a suit standing at a window. But instead of his reflection, the glass showed a young boy flying a kite. The technique was simple, but profound. "I paint what I see," Luna explained. "Sometimes people forget who they used to be." Nathaniel stared at the painting, and for a moment, he remembered being 8 years old, standing in his backyard with a red kite, feeling like he could touch the clouds. He remembered believing that anything was possible, that the world was full of magic waiting to be discovered. "How much do I owe you for this?" he asked, reaching for his wallet. Luna shook her head. "Some things can't be bought. But if you want to pay me back, just remember to fly the kite once in a while." As Nathaniel walked back to his tower of glass and steel, he carried the small painting in his jacket pocket. For the first time in years, he noticed things. Way leaves swirled in the wind, the laughter of children in a nearby park, the smell of fresh bread from a bakery. But more than anything, he couldn't stop thinking about the woman who had seen through his walls in a matter of minutes and reminded him that somewhere deep inside, he was still human. The Ice King's empire was about to meet its greatest threat, not a business rival or a market crash, but a young artist who painted truth and served coffee with a side of magic. 3 days passed before Nathaniel found himself standing outside the painted moon again. He told himself it was because the coffee was exceptional, but deep down he knew it was something else entirely. Luna had awakened something in him that he'd thought was dead forever. This time, he didn't wear his usual armor of expensive suits. Instead, he chose dark jeans and a simple sweater clothes he'd forgotten he owned. As he descended the narrow stairs, he felt like he was entering a different universe. The cafe was busier than before. Students filled every corner, working on laptops and sketching in notebooks. The walls displayed new artwork, local artists showcasing their dreams in paint and pencil. Luna moved through it all like a guardian angel, bringing not just drinks but genuine care to everyone she touched. "Well, look who decided to come back," she said when she spotted him, her smile lighting up the room. Did the magic work? Nathaniel found himself almost smiling, a muscle movement so foreign it felt strange. "I kept thinking about the painting." "And the kite?" He hesitated. "I haven't flown one yet." Luna laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Well, Rome wasn't built in a day. What can I create for you today?" "Surprise me," he said. Words that would have been impossible a week ago. As Luna worked her magic behind the counter, Nathaniel noticed her friend Sophie watching him with curious eyes. Sophie was a literature student with purple hair and vintage glasses, clearly Luna's opposite in many ways, but obviously devoted to her. "You're the billionaire everyone's talking about," Sophie said, approaching his table. "Nathaniel Ashford, right?" Nathaniel tensed, waiting for the usual reaction: fear, greed, or calculating interest. Instead, Sophie just looked thoughtful. "Luna doesn't know who you are," Sophie continued. "She doesn't read business magazines or follow celebrity news. To her, you're just a sad man in expensive clothes who needed better coffee."
Is that what?
She said, "No, that's what I'm saying." Sophie grinned. "Ah!" "Luna said you were someone who'd forgotten how to dream. She likes people like that. She thinks they're the most interesting to wake up." The art of seeing Luna returned with a drink that looked like liquid autumn. Golden brown with swirls of caramel and topped with foam art that resembled a phoenix rising from flames. "This is called Second Chances," she said, settling into the chair across from him. "I was experimenting with new flavors." As Nathaniel tasted the drink, Luna pulled out a sketchbook and began drawing. Her hands moved with confident strokes, capturing not just his appearance, but something deeper. "What are you drawing?" "The person hiding behind the person," she said without looking up. "Everyone has layers. Most people only show the surface. But artists learn to see deeper." For 20 minutes, they sat in comfortable silence while she worked, and he watched. Other customers came and went, but Luna had somehow created a bubble of peace around their table. "Can I ask you something?" Nathaniel said finally. "Shoot! Why aren't you afraid of me? Everyone else is." Luna looked up from her sketch, studying his face. "Should I be? Most people think so. Most people are silly." She turned the sketchbook around, showing him her work. "I draw what I see, and what I see is someone who's been hurt and decided that being alone was safer than risking more pain." The drawing was remarkably, showed him sitting at the table, but his shadow was a young boy building sandcastles. Somehow, she'd captured both his present isolation and his lost innocence. "How do you see all that?" "Practice and intuition." Luna closed the sketchbook. "Plus, I grew up with a father who thought emotions were weakness. I learned to recognize the walking wounded." The invitation to life over the following weeks Nathaniel found himself returning to the painted moon almost daily. It became his sanctuary. It's the one place where he could simply exist without the weight of expectations or the armor of success. Luna introduced him to her world slowly, like someone teaching a wounded animal to trust again. She showed him the local artists who gathered for weekly critique sessions, the chess tournaments Frank organized, the poetry readings Sophie hosted on Thursday nights. Should come to one, Luna suggested during his 10th visit. There's something beautiful about hearing people share their souls. I don't really do social gatherings. Since when? It was a simple question that hit like a lightning bolt. Since when had he stopped participating in life? Since when had he become a spectator instead of a player? I wouldn't fit in, he said honestly. Why? Because you have money. Because you wear expensive watches? Luna shook her head. People don't care about that stuff here. They care about whether you're real or fake, whether you're brave enough to be vulnerable. The brothers concerned Nathaniel's transformation didn't go unnoticed. David, his younger brother, and the only family he had left, cornered him during their monthly dinner at an exclusive restaurant. You're different, David said, cutting into his steak. Softer somehow. Are you sick? I'm fine. No, you're not. Fine. David searched for words. You're acting human again. It's disturbing. David had always been the opposite of Nathaniel, warm, social, still capable of forming genuine relationships. He'd watched his older brother retreat into himself after Michael's death, and had given up trying to reach him years ago. I met someone, Nathaniel said quietly. David nearly choked on his wine. A woman? Please tell me she's not another gold digger with a sociology degree. She's an artist. She owns a cafe. Oh God, it's worse than I thought. She's poor. The dismissive tone that Nathaniel would have agreed with weeks ago now felt like nails on a chalkboard. She's not poor. She's rich in ways we've forgotten how to be. David stared at his brother as if he'd grown a second head. Listen to yourself. This woman has you talking like a greeting card. What's her angle? There is no angle. She doesn't even know who I am. Then tell her and watch how quickly her genuine feelings develop a price tag. The test of truth. David's words haunted Nathaniel for days. He realized that Luna still didn't know about his wealth, his company, his status in the world. To her, he was just Nathaniel, a man who drank coffee and listened to her stories about the artists she mentored and the dreams she painted. But secrets had a way of revealing themselves. And Nathaniel's came out during a moment he least expected. Luna was showing him a new piece, a massive canvas depicting the city at night. But instead of harsh lights and cold buildings, she'd painted warmth and life into every window. This is how I see New York, she explained. Everyone thinks it's cold and cruel, but really it's full of people trying to connect, trying to find their place. It's beautiful, Nathaniel said, and meant it. I'm hoping to sell it to help pay for art supplies for the kids program I'm starting. Teach local children that they can create beauty, even in difficult circumstances. Before he could stop himself, Nathaniel said, I'll buy it. Luna laughed. Nathaniel, this costs $3,000. It's sweet of you to offer, but I'll write you a check right now. Something in his tone made her look at him more carefully. What kind of work do you do? The question hung in the air like a sword about to fall. Nathaniel realized he stood at a crossroads. He could continue the lie of omission, or he could trust Luna with the truth. I run a technology company, he said simply. Like tech support or web design, something like that. But Luna was smart, and she was beginning to piece things together. Expensive clothes he tried to hide, the way he never worried about. Money, the careful distance he maintained from certain topics. That evening, Sophie did what best friends do. She Googled the mysterious man who'd been monopolizing Luna's attention. What she found made her call Luna immediately. You need to see this, Sophie said, showing up at Luna's apartment with her laptop. Your coffee shop regular? He's Nathaniel Ashford. Aston Ashford Technologies. Aston worth $8 billion. Stared at the screen showing pictures of Nathaniel in business magazines, at charity galas, in boardrooms commanding attention and respect. $8 billion, she whispered. With a B, Luna, he's one of the most powerful men in the country. Been pretending to be a regular customer? The next morning, Luna was waiting when Nathaniel arrived for his usual coffee. But instead of her typical warm smile, her expression was guarded. We need to talk, she said, leading him to a corner table. Nathaniel knew immediately that his secret was out. Sophie told you. Why didn't you tell me yourself? Would it have changed how you treated me? Luna considered this. Probably that's why. They sat in silence for a moment, the easy comfort they'd built over weeks, suddenly feeling fragile. I feel like an idiot, Luna said finally. Here I was, trying to help this lonely man find his way back to humanity, and you were probably laughing at my little cafe and my simple dreams. Never. The word came out with more force than Nathaniel intended. Luna, these past weeks have been the most real I've felt in years. Your cafe, your dreams, none of it is simple. It's extraordinary. But you lied to me. I omitted the truth. There's a difference. Luna shook her head. Is there? You let me worry about selling one? Painting to fund my kids' program when you could have funded 100 programs without blinking? The distance grows over the next few days. Luna was polite but distant. She served Nathaniel his coffee with professional courtesy, but the easy conversation and shared moments were gone. The magic had evaporated, replaced by the harsh reality. Of different worlds, Nathaniel tried to bridge the gap, but every attempt felt clumsy and desperate. He offered to fund her children's art program, and she accused him of trying to buy forgiveness. He suggested they go to dinner somewhere nice, and she said she didn't want to be his charity case. You don't understand, Luna said during one particularly painful conversation. I spent my whole childhood watching my mother get manipulated by rich men who thought money could solve everything, swore I'd never be that woman. I'm not trying to manipulate you. Then what are you trying to do? It was a question Nathaniel couldn't answer because he wasn't sure himself. All he knew was that the thought of losing Luna felt like watching the sun go out, the breaking point. End came during a busy Friday afternoon. Nathaniel was sitting at his usual table, pretending to read, while actually watching Luna work. When a group of his business associates walked into the cafe, Rebecca Hamilton spotted him immediately. Nathaniel, oh, what on earth are you doing in a place like this? The conversation that followed was everything Nathaniel had feared. His colleagues spoke loudly about deals and acquisitions, treating the cafe like a quaint curiosity rather than someone's life work. They made casual comments about slumming it and joked about the bohemian atmosphere. Luna watched from behind the counter, her face growing colder with each word. When Nathaniel finally managed to hustle his colleagues out, she was waiting for him. I think you should stop coming here, she said quietly. Luna, please. This isn't your world, Nathaniel. I'm not your charity project or your walk on the wild side. Find somewhere else to get your coffee. As Nathaniel walked out of the Painted Moon for what he thought might be the last time, he realized that having money could buy almost anything except the thing he wanted most. Without Luna's cafe to anchor him, Nathaniel threw himself back into work with a vengeance that surprised even his most dedicated employees. Meetings that used to last an hour stretched to 3. He acquired 2 companies in a single week, crushing the competition with ruthless efficiency that made headlines in business journals. But success felt like ash in his mouth. Emma Rodriguez, his new assistant after James had finally requested a transfer, watched her boss with growing concern. Nathaniel had always been demanding, but now he was almost manic in his pursuit of deals and dominance. Sir, Emma said carefully during a rare quiet moment. You've been working 18-hour days for 2 weeks. Perhaps you should take a break. I don't need a break, Nathaniel replied, without looking up from his computer. I need results. But late at night, alone in his penthouse office, Nathaniel found himself staring at Luna's small painting of the boy with the kite. He'd had it professionally framed and hung it where only he could see it. It's a reminder of what he'd lost. The underground network, meanwhile, Luna was discovering that her life had been more intertwined with Nathaniel's than she'd realized. 3 days after banning him from the cafe, a lawyer appeared with a check for $50,000. Mr. Ashford wanted to contribute to your children's art program, the lawyer explained. No strings attached. Luna tore up the check in front of him. The next week, her landlord called to inform her that someone had paid her rent for the next 2 years. Luna knew immediately who was responsible and spent an entire afternoon on the phone demanding that money be returned. He's trying to control me, she complained to Sophie. He thinks he can just throw money at problems and they'll disappear, or Sophie suggested gently. He's trying to take care of someone he loves in the only way he knows. How? Love, Luna laughed bitterly. Sophie, he lied to me for weeks. Everything between us was built on a lie. Did his feelings seem fake when he looked at you? Did his laughter sound rehearsed when you told him about your dreams? Luna fell silent, because Sophie was right. Whatever else Nathaniel had hidden, his emotions had been real. She'd seen it in his eyes when he thought she wasn't looking, a hunger for connection that all the money in the world couldn't satisfy. The mentor's wisdom. Catherine Wells had been Luna's art teacher in college and remained her mentor and friend. At 65, she'd seen enough of life to recognize patterns that younger people missed. When Luna showed up at her studio crying about billionaires and broken trust, Catherine listened with the patience of someone who'd heard similar stories before. "Tell me about him," Catherine said, handing Luna a cup of tea. "Not his bank account. Him." So Luna talked. She described Nathaniel's careful way of listening, as if every word mattered. His surprise when she painted his portrait, as if no one had ever really seen him before. The way he'd slowly relaxed in the cafe, becoming more human with each visit. "He sounds lonely," Catherine observed. "He lied to me. Did he? Or did he just not volunteer information you didn't ask for?" Luna frowned. "What's the difference? Was he trying to deceive you? Or was he trying to be someone other than what the world had made him?" It was a question Luna couldn't answer easily. In her anger, she'd assumed the worst about Nathaniel's motives. But thinking back, she remembered how he'd never flaunted his wealth, never acted superior, never treated her cafe as anything less than precious. The business rival, while Luna wrestled with her feelings. Nathaniel faced a crisis that threatened everything he'd built. Robert Chen, a ruthless competitor who'd been trying to acquire Ashford Technologies for years, had noticed Nathaniel's recent distraction and was moving in for the kill. Robert's strategy was simple. Attack when the enemy was weak, he spread. Rumors about Nathaniel's mental state suggested that the great CEO was losing his edge. He poached key employees with generous offers and launched a hostile takeover bid that caught Nathaniel's board off guard. "You need to fight back, Rebecca," Hamilton urged during an emergency board meeting. "Robert is playing dirty, and he's using your recent behavior as ammunition." "What recent behavior?" Nathaniel asked, though he knew the answer. "You've been different, distracted. People are starting to talk about your mysterious absences, your sudden interest in whatever it is you've been doing." Nathaniel realized that his time with Luna hadn't just changed his heart, it had changed his priorities in ways that the business world saw as weakness. The man who once struck fear into competitors' hearts was now vulnerable because he'd learned to feel again. The art of wartha. Battle for Ashford Technologies played out in boardrooms and trading floors. But Nathaniel found himself thinking about Luna's painting of the city at night. She'd seen warmth where others saw coldness, connection where others saw isolation. During a particularly brutal day of negotiations, Nathaniel made a decision that shocked everyone. He walked out of the meeting. "Where are you going?" Rebecca called after him. "To remember who I am," he replied. Nathaniel drove to the Painted Moon, knowing Luna had banned him but desperate to see the place that had reminded him how to live. He sat in his car across the street, watching through the windows as Luna served coffee and encouraged young artists. That's when he saw them, a group of children, maybe 8 or 9 years old, sitting around a table with paintbrushes and canvases. Luna had started her art program despite having no funding, using her own money to buy supplies and her own time to teach. One little girl held up a painting of a rainbow house with wings, and Luna's face lit up with pure joy. In that moment, Nathaniel saw what real success looked like: not money or power, but the ability to nurture dreams and inspire hope. The grand gesture that night, Nathaniel called an emergency meeting of his board. When everyone had assembled, he made an announcement that would have seemed impossible weeks earlier. "I'm restructuring the company," he said. "We're creating a foundation dedicated to supporting arts education in underserved communities. Personally funding it with $2 billion. The room erupted in shocked protests. Rebecca was the first to speak. "Nathaniel, you can't just give away a quarter of your wealth on a whim." "It's not a whim. It's an investment in something that matters. The stockholders will revolt." "Let them." Nathaniel's voice was calm but final. "Some things are more important than stock prices." The word of the foundation spread. Something unexpected happened. Instead of seeing it as weakness, investors began to view Nathaniel as a visionary. A leader who understood the value of social responsibility. Stock prices, after an initial dip, began to climb. Robert Chen's hostile takeover collapsed as shareholders rallied behind a CEO who was clearly thinking beyond quarterly profits. The letter but. Nathaniel's real motivation wasn't business strategy. It was a chance to show Luna who he'd become. He wrote her a letter explaining the foundation and included a proposal that made her hands shake as she read it. Asterisk Luna. I know you don't want to see me, and I understand why. But I need you to know that everything you taught me about humanity and connection has changed how I see the world. The Ashford Foundation for Arts Education will provide funding, supplies, and support for programs like the one you've started. But more than that, it will be guided by your vision of art as a way to heal and inspire. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to help me use my resources to make the kind of difference you believe in. The foundation needs a director who understands that art isn't a luxury. It's a necessity for the human soul. The job is yours if you want it. No strings attached. No personal relationship required. Just a chance to change thousands of lives through the power of creativity. If you decide to say yes, meet me at Central Park tomorrow at sunset. I'll be flying a kite, with all my love and respect. Nathaniel asterisk the choice. Luna read the letter 17 times before showing it to Sophie, who immediately started researching the foundation. Everything Nathaniel had claimed was true. He'd committed an enormous fortune to arts education, and early reports suggested he was serious about making a real impact. This is incredible, Sophie said. Do you know how many children you could help with resources like this? It feels like he's trying to buy me, Luna said, though her protest sounded weak even to her own ears. Is he? Or is he trying to find a way to do good in the world, while also giving you a reason to be in his life? Catherine, when consulted, was more direct. Luna, dear, sometimes love comes disguised as opportunity. The question isn't whether he has ulterior motives, it's whether you're brave enough to find out. The next evening, Luna found herself walking through Central Park as the sun began to set. She told herself she was just curious. She had no intention of accepting Nathaniel's offer or forgiving his deception. But when she saw him standing in an open field, struggling with a red kite that refused to catch the wind, her heart cracked open. He looked different to her somehow, despite the expensive suit he still wore. His hair was messed up from the wind, and there was a vulnerability in his posture that she'd never seen before. He was trying so hard to make the kite fly that he didn't notice her approach. You're doing it wrong, she said softly. Nathaniel spun around, hope and fear warring in his eyes. Luna. The kite needs to trust the wind, she continued, moving closer. You're trying to control it instead of letting it soar. Without waiting for permission, she took the string from his hands. With a few gentle adjustments and an understanding of how to work with the natural forces, the kite rose into the darkening sky. What did you, my dad, taught me? Luna said, keeping her eyes on the kite. Before he forgot how to see magic in simple things. They stood together in silence, watching the red kite dance against the backdrop of city lights. Finally, Nathaniel spoke. I started flying kites because you told me to remember who I used to be. But I realized I don't want to go backward. I want to become someone new. Someone worthy of the way you see the world. Luna turned to face him fully. Nathaniel, the foundation, this grand gesture, isn't a gesture, he interrupted. With or without you, that money is going to help children create art and discover dreams they didn't know they had. But with you, he paused, searching for words. With you, it could be something extraordinary, the kiss that changed everything for. A long moment, they just looked at each other. The man who'd commanded boardrooms and the woman who'd painted hope on cafe walls. Two people from completely different worlds who'd somehow found a way to see the truth in each other. I was so angry, Luna said finally. Not because you had money, but because I thought you didn't trust me enough to be honest. I was terrified, Nathaniel admitted. Terrified that if you knew who I was in the business world, you'd stop seeing who I could be in your world. Luna stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. I do you. In my world, someone who's learning that the best investments aren't measured in dollars. Someone who wants to spend his life helping you teach children that they can paint their own futures. The words hung between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed. Luna thought about all the reasons she should walk away, the complications, the scrutiny, the vast difference in their circumstances. Then she thought about the way Nathaniel's face had changed when he laughed for the first time in her cafe. She thought about the painting he'd treasured, the careful way he'd listened to her dreams, the foundation that would help thousands of children discover their own creativity, without warning, without hesitation, without caring about the consequences. Luna rose on her tiptoes and kissed him. The kiss was everything their first meeting should have been: honest, passionate, full of possibility. It was Luna saying yes to the foundation, yes to partnership, yes to a love that had bloomed in the most unlikely of circumstances. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. The kite continued to soar above them, a red symbol of dreams taking flight. "So," Nathaniel said, his voice rough with emotion, "does this mean you'll take the job?" Luna laughed, the sound carrying across the park like music. "I'll take the job. I'll take the foundation. And I'll take you, Nathaniel. Ashford, all of you. Billions and all. Even though I lied." "You didn't lie? You just forgot to mention that you could buy the Empire State Building." She grinned. "Besides, I've got news for you. I'm not exactly poor either. My paintings sell for more than you think, and I own the building my cafe is in." Nathaniel stared at her in surprise. "You what?" "I inherited it from my grandmother. I just never mentioned it because it didn't seem important." Luna shrugged. Funny how secrets work both ways. The new beginning 6 months later, the Ashford Foundation for Arts Education had opened its doors in a converted warehouse in Brooklyn. The space was filled with natural light, colorful murals, and the laughter of children discovering their creative voices. Luna stood in her office, watching through the glass wall, as a class of 80-year-olds painted their interpretation of their neighborhood. One little boy had painted his apartment building, but instead of the drab gray reality, he'd covered it in rainbows and given it wings. "Reminds me of someone I know," Nathaniel said, appearing in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee. "Luna. Specials from the cafe cart they'd installed in the foundation's lobby. Who? An artist who taught me that the most beautiful things in life are the ones that help people fly." Luna accepted the coffee and leaned into his embrace. Through the window, she could see the red kite they'd hung in the main gallery, not as decoration, but as a reminder that dreams like kites were meant to soar. "Any regrets?" Nathaniel asked, his arms tightening around her. Luna looked out at the children creating magic with paint and possibility. Then up at the man who'd learned to love by learning to trust. "Only one," she said. "I wish I'd kissed you that first." Day in the cafe, Nathaniel laughed, a sound that had become as natural as breathing. "Well, we have the rest of our lives to make up for lost time." Outside, the city hummed with 8 million stories of connection and hope. And in a converted warehouse in Brooklyn, a billionaire and an artist continued to discover that the greatest treasures couldn't be bought, they could only be shared, nurtured, and allowed to fly free. The end.